Title of this panel is Terpene Tricks from Media to Magic. What actually works? Because we know there's a couple tricks. So, loud cannabis is not explained by a total percentage alone. Aroma and flavors are shaped by genetic, cultivation, stress response, minor compounds, flavonoid, volatile sulfur compounds, post-harvest handling, packaging time, lab method, and consumer perception. So, since there's all those criteria, what is actually loud cannabis? I would like every of our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves and then tell us what is loud cannabis for them.
Oh, there we go. Dan Cook with True Terpenes. So loud cannabis for me really starts with the kind of California origins of gassy. So think Kush from the California hills. That was traditionally what was defined as loud cannabis. I think it's evolved over time and it has more dimensionality to it. It's not just a singular note. So if you think about it like an orchestra, 80 pieces, it's not just tubas playing, right? You have the brass section, the windwoods, you have the percussion, right? And so for me, loud has layers, nuance, character, depth to it that is not that singular note, that singular layer. A lot of people playing now, right? And so it's not just intensity, but it's nuance.
Hi, Chris Crosby with Land Cultivation, founder and chief operating officer.
Guys, quickly, a quick round of applause for Chris that won Standard Producer of the Year yesterday. Well deserved.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. What is loud? So, I mean, I think it's really a qualitative comment on the entire production cycle. And like you said, you know, the stress responses and your process and your technique all the way to post-harvest. And the curing of the cannabis and, you know, losing certain volatile organic compounds and preserving other ones, with also some limitations by the genetics of the cultivar as well. Certainly growing methodology and post-harvest strategy can bolden or increase the aromatic effects of the VOCs. But I do think there's a big reliance on certain genetics, obviously, to be predisposed to their top terpenes and other compounds that Alex noted as well.
Hi, I'm Ben Baker. I'm with McCall Family Farms. I'm the production manager. So loud cannabis to me is like, it doesn't have to be like, it'll announce itself. If I open my container or something, like you'll smell it way closer to the mic. So that would be loud for me. Like it's going to announce itself. It speaks levels, literally. Loud. It's going to speak tons of levels. So that's what loud is to me.
Rebecca Greenjoy, General Manager Greenjoy. I mean, I would echo all of that thing. I think complexity. When I think loud, you open a bag and you're like, ooh, it's different for everybody. It's definitely like how pungent it is, but also how complex it is. And like you guys said, there's a lot that goes into that. But when I think loud, it's like you open that bag and I think it's nuanced, like it's different. Some people will be like, ugh, some people will be like, whoa, but that would be, in a nutshell, for me, what loud would be.
You understood well the assignment. They went a little bit too deep in science. But yes, perfect. Those are all valid point of view and exactly what we wanted to hear about how we define loud. But now that loud has become somewhat, I would say, thrown around too easily, what would you classify as maybe incomplete science, myth, folklore of what you're seeing out there with consumer buying product that maybe they think is loud based on, let's say, terpene percentage? So would love to have a round of opinion on that.
Yeah, it myth. I mean, there's a lot of myth, and I think percentage and participation does not carry the day. Like you can have the human nose can detect mercaptan at parts per billion. Like we put things through GCMS Like put flower through GCMS, doesn't detect it. Put it to your human nose, skunk. Yeah. Right? And so the human nose is the most powerful instrument that we have out there. And if you go by percentage weight, it's not that it's meaningless, like it's a data point, but it's one data point. And you really have to fill that in with a more comprehensive sensory analysis. Like, what does your nose tell you, right? And so you can have these minor volatile compounds that are so hard to capture and to protect through the life cycle of the product, and I mean from like field to, wherever you go with it from there, right? And they volatilize so fast, so quickly, but they can disproportionately shape the human experience with this, right? The cake, the gas, all of it. What makes a strain a strain?
Yeah, I completely agree. There's the sensory element of it versus the scientific data points and the quantitative analysis. I think there's, probably more value in the subjective sensory experience because that's what the product is, after all, consumer-based good, and people have their own, preferences. Obviously, it's great to see the data points you can get from quantitative analysis through labs, but you do have to look at more than just the total terpene percentage. Obviously, like there's certain labs that test on a wider array of terpenes, which will boost your numbers up. But is it great to see what are your top terpenes in it, especially when you do some changes in your environment and you're growing, if you're tweaking your VPD, maybe different light spectrum, adding LED or whatever under canopy lighting. You definitely want to keep track. One thing that from growing in my legacy days to going commercial, one thing that I found quite interesting, which I didn't really realize, is that tweaks in the environment can change the top terpenes in your cultivar. I really associated that many years ago with just the genetic itself of the cultivar, but we've grown some things now for 4 and 5 years, and with tweaks to nutrients and our crop steering and media, dialing in the VPD and our PPFD. Like I've seen the terpenes, the top 3 terpenes on something just change overnight from one batch to another. So there's merit in all the scientific data, but you can't really trump that with the sensory consumer experience.
So let's see. Just lost my train of thought for a second here. So numbers, they say numbers don't lie, but you can't just go off of like percentages like that. If I see something and it's 4%, 5% terpenes, yeah, that's a great number to go on. But if I'm looking for the top, I need to actually try it and enjoy it to actually get the full nose and effect of it, really. But obviously, there's a place for numbers. People are going to want something that is higher, but sometimes you got to go by more than just what they're saying on the package. And that if I found something that I liked and tried 3 or 4 years ago, and I see that same strain on there, I'm not going to be paying attention to the terpene levels on it. I'm going to be paying attention to, I love this strain. It should taste the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think also if we're talking about things that might not reflect all the way through, the amount of time between when you're pulling a sample to take your send for analysis for terps and the time somebody opens that jar, a lot happens in that, especially because terps are volatile, and it's true, cultivation has a huge impact on that. So like a number is necessary, but it's about consistency and about that number actually reflecting what you're gonna experience when you open the jar, which has a lot to do with the entire process, like to the shelf. So numbers are good, but it has to line up. You have to like have something behind what that number on the jar is.
So, question for you guys. You guys are the cultivators.
Yeah.
So, in our experience, which is limited in cultivation compared to what you guys do you guys calibrate the timing of cultivation for the peak of certain compounds like thiols or esters or things like this? Are we there yet, or is that a lot more R&D, a lot more research, a lot more investigation needs to happen?
I wouldn't say we dial in our production schedule based around the more volatile organic compounds like those. But we certainly, we're pretty traditional. We look at our trichome ripeness and let the strain go to the point where you do have enough aged trichomes. Some people, for different strategies, such as washing and making rosin, they might cut it down a little early so they have unripened trichomes to affect the coloration of the output of the hash. We don't specialize in solventless, so we really dial it in for the total ripened effect of the strain. Now, like you also, in a production schedule like ours, we do have to be careful what cultivars we grow, because some of them that want to go a couple extra weeks, it can be quite difficult. So you really have to look at the yield output, because it's a business, and understanding licensed producers' cost per goods is one of the anomalies that many people haven't really gotten to yet. And is there enough margin to take care of your overheads and still make a good product? So we're very cautious on genetics that we grow that do require that extra time, unless the yield is up by a certain percentage where I can control my cost per gram. At the moment, our target for fully indoor hand trim, hung dry, we're typically in between 89 to like 93 cents. And once we go too far above $1, we're finding it quite hard to be competitive to also hit appropriate margin on our SKUs across Canada. So it would be nice to take that approach. I would be very surprised if a licensed producer at any size were chasing different VOCs outside of just getting good potency and a high terpene percentage. I don't know if anybody's really dialing the crop in that far out of commercial.
Thanks.
So we're more focused on keeping like our VPD and everything perfect so that we can have higher levels. We don't really focus on doing certain things to pull those, but most of it is like how we're handling it after harvest, how we're curing it, and all of that, really.
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Chris said. I mean, potency is still also the main driver for price point that you're getting. So in a plant, like, we're still mostly looking at that. So the terps are there, what your genetic can do if you steered your room in the right way to know that you're going to hit the potency and things are ripening when they should. It's preservation of what the plant has made in terms of terps. And those, from what I've seen, usually go hand in hand. Like if you're, I'm not going to say inducing stress. If you're thinking the plant is gonna feel stressed in the right way, your potency is there, your terps should be there, but it's not the main driver. And it's true, like in production schedule, like you have some wiggle room, but you have to be careful about what you let determine the moves you make in a production facility.
I'm gonna go off script here. Let's cut the bullshit. So, all right, guys. I think what everybody wants to know is, how come we have some product that are clocking 5, 6, 7% terps? They fucking taste less than products at 1.7. How come we're always seeing the 5 or 6 main dominant terpene just in different orders, and everything seems to be tasting different? People are getting lost in there. They're not understanding. Should it be chasing the number? Should it not be? What is bullshit? What isn't?
So, no, and again, our lens, the lens we look at things with is sensory. So we're all about sensory. If we've professionalized at our company one thing, it's how you interpret things with your nose more than anything. It goes right to the human brain, right? Bypasses logic and reason. It's memory, nostalgia, pleasure, right? And so for us, we care. Look, we pay attention to the panel, the lab panels, and the numbers, and of course. But it matters less. We don't obsess with terpene percentage at all, because terpene percentage, number one, you don't know. I think someone mentioned earlier, you don't know what panels that lab ran. Maybe they tested for 10 terps, right? Not 20 or not 30. So, and also, what's the concentration of the terps? Is it all like a couple? Is there any diversity there? But most importantly for us, it's back to the light volatiles. That hard to capture, hard to harness stuff, the thiols, esters, aldehydes, ketones, alcohols. That's what shapes the experience, in our opinion. more than anything. It's disproportionate. These light volatile compounds punch way above their weight.
When you say, in your opinion, do you have any form of study or anecdotal evidence that you have to support?
Absolutely. So our head of cultivation was one of the founders of the Oregon Cultivation Classic. For 5 years pre-COVID, COVID knocked this whole thing out. But for 5 years, we gathered the top organic growers in Oregon, and we did double-blind panels with hundreds of consumers. And what we tested for was preference. And we took away the labels, the brands, we took away the numbers, we took away THC percentage. And what drove preference was aroma for 5 years. And to your point, not enough research in this area exists today. And so True Terpenes, we're going to double down on this, and we're going to put real money behind research this year and in the coming years, because to your point, not enough exists. We need more data around this. We intuitively, someone said, you open the jar, right? Aroma, right? That's intuitive, that's classic, but we need more hard data. We need to prove this out. And the Cultivation Classic is a good example of that.
Crosby?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to cut through the bullshit, I don't think total, your terpene analysis panel, I think has a little less bullshit than chasing labs and hunting THC and whether it's anhydrous results or not and whatever else. With the relationship with the lab, you can typically get things over the line if you expect a certain number. But there's certainly a variance on the panel for the amount of total terpenes that are tested. I've seen labs originally maybe, I think they're sub 20, and now there's panels out there with 120 something terpenes, and you're going to boost your total numbers if you're testing for more volatile compounds. So I think there's merit in seeing what your top terpenes are for expectations in a regulated industry where you typically can't smell the cannabis. So I think it's good to look at maybe not the number associated with it, but the order in which the top terpenes are mixed together. It should be an indicator of something that as a sensory consumer experience you prefer. So I think that's the value in it. But the total number, just like the total THC, I think there's a lot less value than that. It doesn't dictate the consumer experience.
Basically just reinforcing what you just said. I really do think that the market is too concerned with numbers. THC is great, says 29%, but if it's not enjoyable and you don't like it and it's not totally aromatic, then I'm not going to want to continue to do it and buy that product. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all of that. I think we're having this line where we have to give consumers something to judge things on, and we're not going to say Wild West, but we're still in the stage we know the lab matters, we know how it was packaged matters, we know how hot was the room when it was trimmed matters. Consumer doesn't know that, so we're giving them these indicators that the experience can be wildly different. But I think we have to keep evolving that. We have to give them something to be oh, I like this smell. We have to be able to give them the words to describe what that is so they know what they're looking for. But yeah, there's so much variability and nuance that I think it'll take a minute, but I think we get there. We have to get there in some way. There has to be a level of education with numbers that actually reflect something, but right now it is a little wild.
All right, so we're going to go even touchier, and this time we're going to go the other way around. I want to hear Rebecca a little bit more. So, I mean, what I'm understanding a little bit is numbers are bullshit in the sense that, you can get a 5% terp, but doesn't mean much. Whether everybody likes it or not, THC is a strategy. If you don't have high THC in Canada or even international, you're not selling. The difference between 29 and 26% THC is easily 30 to 40% sales in a week, right? So what about terpenes? Will you guys be going to labs that are testing for more terpenes to have higher number because it is an advantage to compared to your competitors, or is this something you're not even considering? Is it something that the second the consumer opened the bag, it's no longer worth anything, that number, because they're smelling it? What's your opinion on that? Is it worth it?
I mean, yes, for us, like Greenjoy as a company, we put a lot of emphasis on terps. And again, I think it's a new kind of branch way to reach out to people, give new language, a different way to understand a product. You're not just going to be like, oh, I like a 25%. I think there's also, everything is the way your body is processing stuff. I mean, entourage effect, whatever. But it's true, if you kind of blindly, like I've smoked super low potency weed that had a certain profile of terps that knocked me on my ass. Like, so there is something to be said for it being kind of not a personal preference, but we can't say that numbers mean nothing. We have to find a way to make the numbers mean something. But I think a lot of that is education and percentages. Yes, obviously there's an advantage. You're like higher number kind of because the market is not super mature. People see that and it means something to them. Like that's for sure a thing. But I don't know. I mean, we went through that in the past couple of years with potency and labs too, you know? So it's kind of like, okay, here's this next wave of this other thing that's got to be flushed out.
Thank you.
So that's really good to know. So we are just starting to roll out our own packaging and our own brand. We were doing B2B before like that. So it would be nice to have, like you said, you're doing more like scientific testing on terps. That would be great to know, because the more information we can give to people, the more that they'll understand the product, and maybe the market will change a little bit more to being accepting of overall terp levels, and not just focused on the THC and the look and all of that.
Yeah, I've been growing for 22 years, and the reality is you have to grow and make people happy, and you have to sell the weed. So I'm going to give the consumers what they're looking for. If they're going into a retail shop and they're dictating that they want 29 or 30% THC, and a lab that traditionally gives that, am I going to go to them? Yes, because that's where the industry is. And it is remarkable, like Alex said, if you sell anything even below 27% compared to 30%, or people doing 33 and all these ridiculous numbers, you can see a 30 and 40% increase in sales. And I'm in the business of turning packages over and making people happy. So I'm going to go where I go. I think on the terpene analysis side of it, I think consumers, like the average consumer is definitely well aware now of terpenes more than they would have been pre-legalization. I don't necessarily know how many people are hunting their package yet by the total amount of terpenes, but would I go to a lab that one lab had tested for 38 terpenes, one tested for 138, and it was the same price? I'm going to go to the lab that has more, because it's more data. And you can make that number higher. But, as an organization, our commitment to quality and community of fun, which are our business values, is I need to get it into the consumer's hand. And it's my job as the master grower and a beautiful team around me that helped me do everything at Atlantic to have a commitment to quality that they're going to be happy when they get into the bag. So, but retailers want numbers, consumers want numbers, and if it's the same price, to get a higher number, and it doesn't impact my cost of goods, I'm not going to pay 5 times the amount for a terpene analysis panel because it has more terpenes in it. But if it's the same cost, certainly I'll go that way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to meet the consumer where they are, right? You can't advance the consumer at a pace they're not comfortable with. Yeah. And we got businesses to run. Got to pay the bills. And so, no, 100%, I think THC percentage, unfortunately, in my opinion, it is a shortcut commercially, and it does sell. It does sell. I also believe it's a race to the bottom. If we strip away everything else, we're competing on THC percentage. What do you have? You have a commodity. Yeah. You strip away the human experience. And so I think we're all in this for the long game, though. And so this is a progressive thing over time to educate people, to bring people up, to uplift people to the truest form of expression of this plant. And I truly believe that goes through Aroma. That's hard to put on a label and communicate with a lot of noise in the marketplace. and hyper competition, right? And so it's a challenge, but it's a long-term commitment.
And so, what about infused pre-roll? Adding botanical terp, cannabis-derived terpene. For example, what about a low potency and a 10% terps, pre-roll? Or is there any future for very high numbers like that in terpenes? Or do you guys think it's better to maybe try to grow a cultivar that has very high yield, high potency, but a garbage smell, and then make it better with infusing terpenes, or trying to maybe have lower yields but a better cultivar naturally without any add-on? Rebecca first.
So we'll go this way and then we go this way. If I'm speaking for myself, infuse adding terps, no thank you.
Yes, you're not legally responsible
Yeah,
for
I know.
anything you're saying here. We're not speaking in the name of our companies.
I hate that. I really don't like that. I think there's always something kind of synthetic, or you can tell that it's not a built-in feature of what you're consuming. I know some people do, which is fine. So, and I mean, I guess it is also just going where the consumer is kind of leading us. If the demand is there for it, which I assume there is. For me personally, I'd much rather grow a plant that had it all in itself. If it's yield, if it's whatever, if it's, you can compensate for those types of things in the grow. But yeah, I mean, I would say I hope we don't go that way. But again, if people want it and that's the way it goes, then that's it.
I'm in the same boat as you. I don't agree with adding terps. You should be growing the plant to its full potential, making sure you're doing your proper irrigation strategies, your VBT is on point, your leaf temperature is A1. That will give you a good terpene profile and give you the best way to grow. You shouldn't have to add in your terps. If you're adding in terps later down the road, it kind of makes me think, what did you do wrong to make it have to add fake terps to it? Well, not fake terps, but artificial from what is grown there. So, and it just kind of seems dishonest in my full opinion. You should be able to do that without adding anything to it.
The product we cultivate, I wouldn't do that. But I mean, as you just said it then, growing a high yield cultivar that has a little aroma, tests high, and then spraying it. I mean, spray packs are a thing. People are launching them into Canada now. There's some great pre-roll companies that are just doing terpene infusions. Personally, as a consumer myself, I don't like infused pre-rolls that are not, if they're distillate and botanical terpenes. It's not really my thing. I don't really like botanical terpenes that much in my cannabis consumption experience. But if there is a consumer base out there, and I think there is, and it will start to grow because now people are bringing products into it, I wouldn't take the 3,500 kilos I grow and do that with, because I think it would be a miss and not an enjoyable experience for our cultivation team. I like to express the genetics we grow and help and find those genetics. But I buy 20,000 kilos a year from everybody across the industry, and I put them in value and core brands, and I sell a lot more mids than I do premium cannabis. And I think that's a great idea. Like, if I'm going to go out and buy some crazy greenhouse stuff that smells like shit and it's 30%, and somebody wants it to smell like watermelon, I'll do it for them and sell it if there's a consumer, for sure. It's not my product, but absolutely.
Yeah. So my take on this is, again, you have to meet the consumer where they are. And so we kind of bifurcate the world into CANNA faithful and flavor faithful. Our company formulates products that end up in $8 billion worth of, end consumer products. So we have a huge footprint in terms of what we innovate, what we see, and we're B2B. We don't try to dictate where the consumer goes. We try to serve our clients. And so on the CANNA faithful side, I can talk to that. And I don't think Infused is so bad. Here's why. We've hand harvested 100 acres in Yakima Valley, Washington. We have, for 6 years, managed every point of the supply chain to figure out, from type 3 genetics, how do you retain that flavor, that aroma, and work through it. We've made so many mistakes. We've fucked everything up 10 times. And we've really learned through the lens of Aroma how to manage that chain. And so we have a live extracts line. Our live extracts line is cannabis. That goes into infused pre-rolls. And so for the Canna Faithful side, we've honored that tradition. We've stuck to the plant. I mean, we're building on the legacy of breeders that have created the most genetically diverse and aromatically diverse and wonderful plant that exists on Earth. Like, this doesn't happen in other agricultural areas. It is so cool what you guys have all done. And so we honor that legacy. We build upon that legacy. And, we try to, on our Canna Forward side, deliver products that really respect the plant in its truest sense, without interruption, without faith or favor, right? However, on the flavor side, there's a lot of consumers that want flavor. But they want it the way we deliver flavor. When I say flavor, I'm saying watermelon or juicy or fruity or whatever. That's the truth. That's where consumers are going. We're not going to tell them no.
So that was the point where I was getting was there seems to be a drastic disconnection between all the operators, us four, right? And we're seeing amazing success. Like Cannara is absolutely dominating the infused pre-roll market with added botanical terpene. The segment that's seeing the most growth is infused pre-roll, mostly with botanical terpene added, right? So what's happening? How come people like us, we don't necessarily like it, but it seems to be what people are consuming? And how can we allow ourselves to have such a viewpoint of that when it seems to be a part of the future? What are we missing here? Is it because it's going to a demographic that shouldn't be getting those? Is it because different generations have different tastes? What do we think?
Yeah, I think all of those are possible. Like, we're kind of a very bias specific consumer people sitting at this table right now, or I'm like,
we're snobs.
Yeah, like what is, I'm like, yeah, the joint that tastes like watermelon sounds horrendous to me, but give the people what they want. If that's the way it's going, that's the way it's going. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a shame, but I mean,
why is it a
why
shame?
why do I think that's a shame? I don't know. It feels a little sacrilege, but to put it like a reason onto it, maybe just if you live it, breathe it, in it all the time, you know what a plant can do, you know when it is good. I wonder if there's a degree of, like, if you're putting something in a pre-roll, it is consistent. Like, you're infusing it with something that's going to taste like that. So I don't know if people like just the taste of sweet things, or if people are like, oh, I bought it one time, it was amazing. I bought it a second time, tasted like hay. I'm going to go with something that I know is going to be the same because it was manufactured to be that way. So I don't know, maybe part of it's on us as producers. If there's inconsistent product by the time a consumer is getting it, might be contributing. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe
I'm not sure if it's real, because if we look at tobacco, it's the same thing. Tobacco vapes, tobacco cigarette, what is dominating is all those flavored tobacco.
Yeah.
Right? It's not only to the cannabis industry. So
it's true, but I mean, a lot of people that are vaping now were not people that used to smoke cigarettes. It's people that started with vapes. So you'd be like, I vape now. I smoke cigarettes since I was 14 until 2 years ago. I love the taste and smell of tobacco. I would, if a vape could mimic that, I would do that. But I think a lot of people that are vaping now started with that. So maybe that's part of it too.
Okay, generational difference.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, there's definitely a generational difference there. So it is just like with the tobacco products. I mean, I'm 31. I still love sweets. If I'm smoking something, if I'm given a terpene enriched pre-roll, I'm still gonna smoke it, and it could be phenomenal. It's just not something that I personally would go for, but the market dictates what we want to do, and if that is the way that things are going, then we're gonna have to kind of suck it up and go for it. I don't see like the OGs that I was around. They're not going for the fruity, nice smell. They want that classic weed that they grew up smoking and stuff like that. So it's definitely a generational gap for the new smokers, and especially where legalization has only been around for a few years now. that could be people's first introduction to this, and now they get something that isn't infused, and now they're disappointed because it's like, oh, it's not as fruity and great as what I thought it should be. I'm going to stick to what I know and keep going to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the story of legalization itself as we progress and we become more mature, and it's a CPG industry and new consumers are aging into it. But like you said, why is there this difference between the operators like us? And I think that's the story of legalization too. I started growing 22 years ago, became obsessed with the plant. People never even knew what the word terpene was, but it was just the only thing I could think about was cannabis. The only thing I want to do was grow it. The only thing I want to do is consume it. I've been raided. I've been put in jail. I've been locked up on a border chasing this entire journey for a plant, which in all rights should have turned away from ages ago with the amount of drama I've had. And it still continues, optimizing my business and being mature and growing the company and focusing on top and bottom lines. Like, you know, it's a continuous journey, but we're obsessed with that plan. I think the people that came into legalizations to create our business, to raise the capital in a capital risk adverse market with no investors, no centralized, you know, tier one financial institutions really backing you. We took that risk because we're obsessed with the plant, and we created legalization. And we're not the consumer. Like, we're obsessed, and we're in this industry, and everybody's here at this panel for a reason, but we're not generally just selling cannabis to the people in this room. And it changes every day. Every time somebody turns 19, it's a different experience. Like, I have a 14-year-old stepson, and he doesn't even think about cannabis. By the time I was 13, I was smoking weed every day, you know, like, it's just a totally different generational maturity of legalization, and the legalization story itself for the operators that came in versus the consumers today, I think.
Daniel, before you answer, so I think you saw that some of us maybe are also a little bit, I would say, not as knowledgeable as you as terpenes. I think some of us think when we smoke infused joint, we kind of feel it in the throat. Can you educate us on, I'm sure it's safe, what makes a improper or a proper terpene infusion? What is possibly making some bad experience versus good experience? Why should people go with true terpene and choose your product and your expertise?
So on safety, we started a toxicology program 6 years ago. And so everything we put in, we have a board certified toxicologist on our team, and then we get audited by an external toxicologist. You know, so everything that we do is pre-vetted, and we don't push limits. So in terms of safety, like, we've been working at that for a long time. ASTM just adopted our standards as their international standards. So, but again, those are the guardrails. What we manage around is experience. And so I can appreciate the tension in your original question and also the perspectives on the panel, because there's blood, sweat, and tears that have been hard won being close to the plant. And so when we ask a question like that on the flavor forward side, it's like going further away from the plant. Like, that's not what the plant delivers. I totally get that. And that's why we do our live extracts line, and we get as close as we can to the plant. For us, though, it's really about a bigger tent, and there's different ways to interpret it. And, you know, sometimes they say, you know, the worst business owner is a purist consumer because they know what they like, and they don't care what's outside of that, right? But so it depends, though. It depends what type of business you want to grow. Do you want to grow a business very focused on the purist, or on growing in bigger markets? If you want to do growing in bigger markets, there's economic opportunity. We see it. You know, for better or worse, the flavor forward side is driving so much growth right now. I don't know where it's at, you know, in terms of like why not the plant. The plant side is super strong as always, but it's a bigger tent, and there's a lot of different opinions about what consumers want. Again, we don't tell consumers, don't do that. You know, we try to give them the best experience. So what I would say to your question, what I hate is just terp blasting something in a very superficial way, where you just put like 3, 4, 5 terps, and it's like the flavor you're talking about is that. Yeah. And it's not, what we formulate with is not just terps, right? Again, and we do CANNA plus flavor. We do nuances of this. But for us, the cardinal sin is treating a flavor as a superficial human experience. So if you're talking about apple, for example, it's not just apple like you'd find at a gas station. It's like, what's the pithy skin of the apple? What's the fleshy kind of undertones of the apple, right? How do you deliver a depth and nuance for what the consumer wants? The best experience for that consumer. Don't treat it superficially. Whether it's flavor forward, CANNA forward, not our, but we'll deliver the best on either side of the equation.
So just for everybody's knowledge, originally we were supposed to talk about stresses, environment, post-harvest process, but I think you all know that's very important in how we manage terpenes. So that's why we kind of veered off course. Thank you. I think for a little bit of a conclusion before we get to question is, I wouldn't say there's real cheap tricks for terpenes. Using a lab that has a wider testing range is not a cheap trick. That's just advancements in technology. I would question certain labs why they don't have that capability. The only cheap trick that I see is using improper terpene provider that will blast your product. So you need to be sure that you have somebody good, like True Terpenes, that understand what the consumer wants and understand how to do it correctly. Also, I think that for all of us operators, we need to put our ego to the door and, live with the time we're in. And sometimes adding terpene or having infused pre-roll line is important. It completes a portfolio. There's a demand for that. At the end of the day, we're here to please people, not impose or will on them as operators. And so I think that would be my conclusion. I would do a last conclusion round, and then we can move to questions if there are any.
Yeah, I think that's all true. I was just thinking the parallels between us talking about terps and infusing in that way and the parallels between the alcohol industry. I'm thinking about seltzers versus if you're drinking like a whiskey that actually tastes like a thing, and it's you need to have something for everybody. People are going to have different tastes. I drink fruity seltzers, but when it comes to cannabis, I'm like, no, forget it. And I mean food too, right? And you're talking about economic advantage. It's like a tomato, an heirloom tomato that was, grown like small scale. You can't ship it. It tastes amazing, but you're leaving things on the table, sacrificing for others. So I think it's true. I think there's a lot of education to be done. I think there's advancement for us even in our practices and how we get our numbers and how we communicate that and standardizing stuff. I think it's probably just a matter of time for market maturity and our maturity. It's true.
So basically to conclude what everyone else said, so don't really trust levels all that much to the full scope of it. Definitely keeping everything perfect during your harvest and your drying, all that keeps everything nice and good, so when we package and ship out, it's good to go. Leave it at that.
In conclusion, I like the twist you put on the panel. We can get up here all day and talk about best practices for VOC preservations and all that. But I think people who are pushing to this side of the journey for this long probably understand a lot of that. Getting into what we're talking about now, like the maturity of the CPG part of the industry and our consumer dictates. And as you say, like us as original operators that were part of this legalization journey, we're so passionate, and we're not the people that typically want to have disty and botanical terpenes, but absolutely there's a market out there for it. And I'd say every day that expands. Every single day that legalization goes forward, I think that's going to be a growth segment. Absolutely. And I think, it's kind of unfortunate, like we're dinosaurs at this point. The industry is going to change, and people aren't going to have the same story as being like rated and have an ATF kick in your condo with 90 plants in California. Those days are over. And that's our obsession. But now we're here, we're operating because we were so obsessed, and now we're taking care of consumer needs. And absolutely, like, I thought that was a great idea. When I buy some really horrible weed from some random person who's fire sailing it because I'm putting it in the value brand and it has to hit my cost of goods, maybe I should be using a good product and Terpene Infused that, because there probably is a consumer there, and I'm not selling that, and people are starting to. So yeah, I'm gonna, after this, go and look at the products that I can make and figure it out.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's maximize human experience, maximize enjoyment and pleasure. And that's why I think we're all here. And so I worked in wine and lived in South America 10 years working in wine, Argentina and Chile. And wine has a lot of similarities and differences with cannabis, I would say. But one thing they've done very well is to harness aroma and articulate aroma and pleasure. Yeah. Ann Noble, a chemist at UC Davis, in the early 80s, developed an aroma wheel that was adopted by the whole wine industry as the standard for how you talk about wine. I think cannabis needs that sort of lexicon, that sort of architecture around how we talk about aroma. So we don't have to talk about THC percentage or indica sativa, which, if you know the history, is it's a little silly. Right.
Very descriptive of the wine industry, not just loud.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's simple, it's understandable, but there's meat to it in terms of how they talk about things. And so I'm excited by the future. I think it all revolves around aroma and human experience.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Do we have any question in the crowd? You need to speak in the microphone. We're not hearing you.
Do you think in the future that medical terpenes will be solidified and then there'll be like recreational terpenes solidified?
So if I heard the question, will medical terpenes be solidified as like a standard in the future? Yeah, I think so. Look, Dr. Ethan Russo is on our advisory board. He's been doing research in and around terpenes for 30 years plus. That said, there's been such restrictions on medical evaluation of cannabis, over the years. We need so much more data and so much more research. I think it does a disservice to overpromise today the medical impact of what it can do. Like, let's gather the data. Let's not discredit ourselves. And so I think it's very, very much deserving of attention, resources, and focus. I think there's huge promise, but I don't want to stand here and overpromise what we know, because we don't know. We don't know the full story yet, right? And we have, from our part, we've contributed to studies at UC Davis, UCLA, Johns Hopkins. We'll continue to do that. We're big advocates of the future medical potential of this. But let's get our facts together, because in this industry, you have to create a trust signal. And that's what compounds over time, right? If you can create that trust signal, be that signal, that's what I'd recommend.
Guys, we're gonna finish it with this. Honestly, give them a solid hand of applause. They answered some touchy question. A lot of people would have shied away from it. They told you the truth as it was. Thank you very much. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you all for being gentlemen and scholars.